Welcome to Cross-Examination with Jahan Kalantar, where our perspectives will collide, our controversies will arise. We're going to dive into the deep end of discourse, dissecting the complexities of the legal world, using laypeople language, using thoughtful insight and critical examination. I'm excited to do this with you, Jolene.
I know. Oh my God. I am the intern. So I'm honored to be guest appearance for episode 1. Today we'll kind of be diving more into, a lot of controversy surrounding lawyers and a lot about Jahan actually. So get
Love
keen,
talking
guys.
about me, so that is no problem at all.
I know, he's excited. All right. Okay, Jahan, could you maybe share more about, obviously how you got to where you are today? Maybe a little bit about your legal journey?
Sure. So, for those of you who don't know, my name's Jahan Kalantar. I am a criminal defense lawyer and I have a practice here in Sydney. And my road to the law was kind of a bit of a windy one. I went to high school, and in high school I thought I would love to work in the banking and financial sector because it seemed very sexy.
You wanted to be a fin bro, guys.
I did. And I became one, and I found that it was not for me. I absolutely hated it. I was not good at it and I didn't like it. And so I thought, I will go and reskill in something else, which, turned out to be the law. I never thought I'd be practicing in criminal law. I always wanted to do law, but I didn't know in what field. And I sort of fell into criminal law, sort of accidentally, when a good friend of mine, one of my best friends actually, him and I took the bar exams at the same time. And because of that, he was a criminal defense lawyer. He said, come and do some work with me. And that's sort of been the history. And over the last decade, I've done pretty much mostly criminal law. I've done a smattering of family law, commercial law, other sort of bits and pieces, but it's been primarily crime day in and day out. And I love my job. I got the best job on earth.
Wow, okay, that's nice. So I have also seen that you've garnered quite a large following on TikTok. Guys, when I was sitting my interview, I didn't know about Jahan yet, and he felt insulted. So all of you, jump onto his socials right now. So obviously, those of you that are listening to our podcast on Spotify, obviously, we also have visuals, and you can head over to our YouTube to see his mustache in full action in all its glory. And so I wanted to ask, how has providing legal advice on a controversial platform like TikTok, how has that been for you? And is it frowned upon in the law industry?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So firstly, I never give advice. Let me be very clear. Nothing I ever say is advice. What I will generally do, though, is articulate the position that the law has. And I think that that's an okay thing to do.
Yeah.
So for me, the reason I got into TikTok at all is essentially I found that there was a real gap in legal information that people were getting. And it became very clear during the COVID pandemic. So here in New South Wales, essentially what would happen is every day at 11, there'd be a press conference. And at that press conference, essentially, the Premier would come out along with some other bureaucrat, and they would say, hey, this many people are dead, this many people are in hospital, and we have a new law. Bye. And they'd leave, and they wouldn't explain anything. And it was really awful. And I'm sitting at home. I've got a team of, I think, I was like 9 or 10 at the time, going, I can't afford to pay their salaries. I'm stressing out about everything. What can I do? And I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll explain the law. I'll look into what these new laws they bring out are, and I'll explain them. And so what I did is I sat down and I wrote a very well-researched article on LinkedIn where I went through and explained what a public health order is. Like 50 people read it. No one cared. And at the same time, this app, TikTok, was blowing up. And I said, why don't I just kind of explain it in really simple terms on TikTok? Yeah. And I made a couple of videos explaining like this is a public health order. This is what it means. This is how it works. And overnight, I got 200 or 300 followers, which was huge.
Yeah,
because
no, it is huge.
It was huge because I was killing myself to get 1 or 2 new followers on other channels. And so I thought maybe I should spend some time in this. And over that period, it kind of grew and it became like a bigger piece. And for me, legal education, I've gone through sort of a resurgence in that I genuinely thought the general public don't care about legal stuff. I realize now I was completely incorrect. They care very deeply. It's just they've never had someone teach it to them. And so my job is to try to explain things that are a little bit too hard to Google and figure out on your own. And I think it's been a really great interface because hopefully what I'm doing is breaking down the stereotype that lawyers are these serious, scary, unapproachable people. We're just like you guys. You know, there are lawyers that are very fancy. There are lawyers that are absolutely, you know, salt of the earth. And whatever you need, there's a lawyer that can help you. And that's the only thing I'm trying to do with this channel. It's to demystify the legal process and explain to people how to think like a lawyer. Is it a frowned upon in the industry? Of course. Whatever you do in any context that's a little bit unusual, you're going to find people who hate it. That's just the nature of people, and that's just the nature of haters. You know, you can't concern yourself and live your life worried about what somebody who doesn't understand you is going to think about you. You know, I try to be very cautious and careful, never to cross the line, never to say anything that's, you know, inappropriate or unprofessional, because as I'm a practicing lawyer and my first duty is always to the court. But I think legal education is a really important space.
All right. So you've kind of touched into the next question with, you know, the whole idea of having misconceptions about lawyers. So just to play devil's advocate, I think everyone's here for the tea and the controversy. I feel like many people do think that lawyers are arrogant, unapproachable, and it's very, how do I say, it's like a business transaction, right?
Yes.
Like, hey, Jahan, if I had a question legally, are you going to charge me? Like, I don't know how much you charge. I don't want to know, actually.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. Look, I think that there is an inherent amount of ego that goes into any job that is fundamentally zero sum, right? It's interesting because lawyers, there is going to be hypothetically a winner and a loser in almost any and all case.
Yeah.
There's going to be someone who comes better off for it. Surgeons, who are the most arrogant people ever, and I say that being friends with a lot of surgeons, well, no one's ever rooting for disease, right? Because there is a zero-sum game. Either surgery wins or the disease. So I think there needs to be an inherent amount of ego, but ego is very, very different to being unapproachable and is very, very different to being arrogant. I am confident that I can solve your problem, and if I can't, I will tell you straight away and I will guide you to someone who can. There is no problem that is completely unsolvable. That's the first thing to know. There is, maybe I can't solve it and maybe you can't solve it, but there's going to be someone who can solve it. The second thing to understand is that if your lawyer can't explain to you why they're doing what they are doing, that is a huge red flag. That is something you should be concerned about, and that's something that you should really worry about. For me, it's not enough to do the work. I need to explain to you why I'm doing the work, why this thing that I'm doing feeds into the larger objective. Because for many people, they don't care how you solve their problem. They just want it solved.
They want to win,
That's exactly right. I myself have had to, I engaged a lawyer to help me with a real estate transaction that had gone a little bit off the rails. And, whether he files it in the Supreme Court or makes a specific application for relief in this, I don't care. Just fix my problem. I'm stressed out. And so I think that it's really important for people to know that lawyers, yes, we can be a bit cocky. Yes, we can be a bit brash, but we're certainly trying to be approachable. And if the lawyer you're talking to doesn't make you feel comfortable that you can talk to them, that's an issue, and you should think about engaging someone else.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I totally agree. Okay. Now, for the important segment, Jahan, your expertise lies in criminal law, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. So could you please share with our listeners the most dramatic and unforgettable case you've taken throughout your career?
Whew, fantastic question. You offered to let me read these before, and I said, no, it'll seem more
He actually
real.
refused to.
Yeah. And now I'm realizing maybe I should have actually taken you up on that.
See? It's okay. I have everyone's best interest at heart.
You do. Look,
Not Jahan's.
I think that, look, there's been so many cases that have been like real blockbusters. I've never done a murder trial, but I have done attempted murder. I've done terrorism cases. I've done arson cases. I've done pretty serious types of criminality. But, the dramatic ones aren't the ones that stay with you. It's the ones that it was little things where you managed to make a positive nudge in the right direction for someone. I never forget, there was this case I did where essentially there was a disagreement between a person who was a person who had some mental health challenges and the hospital as to what treatment was appropriate. And he really wanted to get treatment with his own private GP and that team, and they thought, no, he's going to fall off the rails. And this guy really just wanted a chance to show that if he was given the path he wanted to take, he could go down a different road. And I fought like an absolute tiger for him. I'll never forget. It was a case. I think it was either legally aided or pro bono. It was not a lot of money in it,
Yeah.
or if any money at all. But I remember we got him the good outcome, and just the sheer joy and gratitude this guy had. Still sends me Christmas cards every year. His life is going fantastic. The other case I did was, and this one was definitely pro bono, because I remember, because this poor woman had acted for a woman who had a horrible life, filled with hardships, really, really tough life. And her children were taken from her by the state. And she had to basically prove that she was a fit mother again. And she was. She'd really taken every step she could take. And she got her kids back. And just that memory of them reuniting, it's been a beautiful thing. So there's heaps of drama. Like, I can tell you so many dramatic things about, like, cheeky prosecutors that don't do the right thing, or that question in cross-examination, whatever. But the things that you think about on a Tuesday night at like 8 p.m. when you're looking out of your window are really those, like,
the heartfelt ones.
Yeah, well, the human stories, right? Well, the ones where, I believe in my heart of hearts there's been one or two clients who genuinely, I believe, were not guilty and were found guilty. And you just haunt yourself. You go, I really don't think that was the case. And those are the things that stick with you.
Right. I think it's always the what ifs that play out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I think the heartfelt, genuine moments are the ones that really keeps you going when, like, shit's really tough,
I think that in law, the highs don't feel as good as the lows hurt. That's the takeaway. The highs feel great for like 45 minutes. Yay. And then you have to jump to the next problem.
Yeah.
Whereas the lows can knock you out for like a week.
Yeah. As all professions, I guess everything's the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so let's not ignore the elephant in the room, right? I think everyone wants to know what's the inspiration behind the story behind your spectacular mustache. And obviously when you're in the courtroom, do you get really weird looks?
I get weird looks everywhere. If you have a mustache like mine, you've signed up for a strange road. Look, I think if I remember correctly, because it's been a very long time, I think a young lady broke my heart, and I thought I'll do something crazy and I'll grow a mustache, and I had a little mustache.
Okay.
And I was in Europe actually, and I saw a guy who had like a mustache very similar to this, and I thought that looks really cool. I wonder if I could pull that off. And then mustaches are like, there's a period where they look absolutely garbage before they look good. It's like a valley, and you got to get through that valley. And so I got through the valley, and now that I've got it, I can't imagine my face without it. It's sort of like my brand and sort of my identity. And I think that it's so zany and weird. People look at you like you're a lunatic. I'm not. I'm just a guy with a strange mustache. I'm actually a pretty ordinary guy. I just have a curly.
But I feel like, there's this stereotype, right? That lawyers are obviously really clean cut, very suave, with their suits and everything. If I saw you in a courtroom, I'd be like, there's no way he's a lawyer. Yeah,
they think I'm the accused. But
I didn't say that.
But I think, but it's also an element of people underestimating you, right? Like, what rule says that I can't be an articulate, intelligent, charismatic lawyer because I have a mustache?
Yeah.
I mean, and I like toying with that stereotype, because there is a subsection of society that grossly underestimates you, and it's nice to be underestimated.
Yeah.
Because you can really do some damage if you're underestimated.
Jahan's like the wild card, you never know what to expect from him, and then bam.
I'm just a nerd who loves the law and happens to have a mustache. But it's a really good question, because people ask it all the time.
Yeah. I feel like our viewers really want to know, like, why? What's the story behind it? Now you guys know. And moving on to the next question. Can you share some insider tips or, I guess, advice on navigating the legal system effectively?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The legal system is not designed to be any more complicated than it needs to be. The problem is life is very, very complex. And so one of the strongest pieces of advice I can give to anyone who has somehow come, rubbing against the legal system, in the sense of something's happened and you want to get... So with a civil case, it usually goes this way. Someone has done something that is unfair. They won't be reasonable, so you have to take it to mummy and daddy, i.e. the legal system. So if you find yourself in that situation, first thing you can do is see if you can figure out sort of what the protocol and process is, And then if if it justifies it, go out, retain a lawyer or speak to a lawyer. See if you can get some, there's a lot of ways to get free legal advice to navigate the system. There's community legal centers, there's legal aid, there's low cost systems, there's pro bono hours. There's 1,000,001 ways to get that support. And I think that people think, oh, I've got to spend all of this money. For me, if I can solve a person's problem in 1 or 2 minutes, I'll happily do so.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I happily do so. It's only when it starts to get up to, okay, we really have something here that needs some time and thought, that you kind of can't give that same sort of love. So the first thing I would ask people to do is just see what the problem is. If you don't know where to start, make a chronology. So make a timeline. This happened, then this happened, then this happened. And gather any evidence. So, if he says, I lent him the money. If you've got a text message that says, hey, bro, I'm lending you some money. And they go, yeah, cheers. That's evidence. Gather your evidence, put it in one spot. And that way, if you do go to a lawyer, you can have a very focused consultation where you're not wasting your money and your time asking bizarre things. And you can really, really achieve a lot in a very short period of time. So be focused. Chronologies are fantastic. That's the first thing I do in every case, by the way. I just make a timeline of what happened and gather your evidence. And if you do that, you'll be in a pretty good position to be able to make the most of a consultation.
Oh, okay. That is very insightful. I think most people we don't know where to start,
It's overwhelming.
Yeah, it is.
And I understand why people hate lawyers. Like, you're paying a person a bunch of money to solve a problem that's super complicated in a way you don't understand. It's completely justifiable to be resentful, but there is a method to the madness, and you need to understand the system in order to activate that method.
Yeah. Actually, I think that is kind of a lead up to my next question. Do you think, if someone got into some legal trouble, had to, appear in court, how important is it to be represented by a lawyer versus being self-represented?
I'm not one of those lawyers that says self-representation you should never do. There's actually probably 1 in 100 cases where the person who's self-representing can tell their story with
better.
Not better, but in their words, and can do it in a way that makes good logical sense, that hits all of the things they need to hit and achieves a pretty good outcome. So there is these people out there who can do that. And, I've given that advice. Somebody's come to me and they said, look, I can't afford a lawyer, but the way that they speak and the way that they talk, I go, yeah, I don't think you really need one for this. I think you can just tell me exactly judge what you told me and you'll be fine. The vast majority of people can't. Like, the vast majority of people cannot. And so I think that representation, what it does is it smooths over a lot of those bumps and allows you to be in a position where, at the very least, that your version of reality will get a fair go at being assessed. And so I think the decision to self-represent is not one that should be made lightly. It's one that you should never do until you've spoken to someone and they go, yeah, look, I think given that, maybe self-representation makes sense for you.
Okay. Wow. That's some really good law insight. I feel like some of these areas, these questions, they don't really get touched over because obviously a lawyer would not sit down and be like, hey, you can walk out my room right now and like self-represent.
Yeah,
so,
well, no,
that's like really good.
I'm a big believer. I have enough work to keep me busy for the next 5 years.
Trust me, I've seen the case files.
Yeah, I'm busy. And you don't necessarily need me. I tell people quite honestly, look, you can represent yourself in this case, or, hey, you don't even need a lawyer that's really, really good at this. This is something that almost any lawyer can do, all the way down to, I think you need a Top Gun. Like, this situation requires it. As a lawyer, I think, I've got a busy practice, and most lawyers that do have busy practices will tell you, I don't want to make, profiteer off people who are struggling and are having a hard time. So if I can solve your problem, I will. And I'm pretty honest with people. Hey, I think you need this level of expertise. You need this. Yep. What somebody requires differs vastly depending on their own individual circumstances, which is why customized, individualized advice is so important.
Yeah, I think now people also understand more of what they're paying for as well. You know, it's really not. I really think that lawyers are really not out there to fleece you just because you made a mistake or you encountered a problem.
There probably are. I mean, it depends on how your practice is structured, right? So I can understand if you're a firm and you've got like 2 clients and you've got like two cases, maybe you are going to overbill them, and maybe that's what you do, right? It's not ethical, it's not appropriate, and I don't condone it, but I can understand why people will get that position. But in case, like, a lot of the work that I do is called fixed fee. So we have a price up front, and it's in my best interest to get everything done as quickly and effectively as possible, because I don't get paid per hour, I get paid per project.
Oh,
And so for me,
okay.
it's really a good idea to get things done effectively, quickly. Now, obviously, if it blows out, that's my problem. I live with that. But the vast majority of the work that I do, especially in crime, tends to be fixed fee. And so I'm hyper incentivized to get you a good result and do it effectively.
That's a good motto to work with. Wow. Okay. This one, I really want to know as well. Oh, actually, after studying law, I kind of know now.
Yep.
But from a lawyer perspective, I would like to know, how does like legal dramas, right? Let's say Suits or something. Everyone, watch Suits, and we were like, dang, lawyers are really cool. How are they different to real life courtroom proceedings?
It could not be more different. The closest, if you want to see a real courtroom drama that is accurate, the closest one is My Cousin Vinny. That's a movie. It's a comedy. It's got Danny DeVito in it. Not Danny DeVito, Joe Pesci, sorry. It's an excellent film. Suits is not real. I'm the best closer in New York. I'm gambling a client's, estate on a hand of poker. All of these are ethical sanctions which would get you disbarred immediately. It's not real whatsoever. Are there moments in a courtroom that have the energy of that kind of theater and TV? Yeah, but they're few and far between. Yeah. The reality is that for every minute I'm in court, I'm spending at least an hour or so in preparation outside of court. And so there's a lot of time spent on the behind the scenes making it all work. You can't show that and make a sexy legal drama. True.
Yeah, it really is true. Honestly, I feel like when you're called to court, majority of the time you spend waiting.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're sitting there going, oh God, worrying about, your client, worrying about this, worrying about that, preparing for tomorrow's case. Yeah, it's always...
It's hectic.
It's hectic. Really hectic. It's a busy job.
Yeah. So now you guys know. Sorry to rain on everyone's parade. Okay, so this is the next lead up. Should the legal system prioritize rehabilitation and reintegration over punishment for offenders? Something a little bit heavier now.
I absolutely think it should. Now, the legal system does have a number of objectives of sentencing. There's a piece of legislation that covers that. One of the biggest ones is something called general deterrence. And general deterrence is I make an example out of you so that people in the community don't do the wrong thing. And that looms large for many, many cases. But for me, what I've seen a lot of is deeply traumatized people who are doing their best in very, very difficult circumstances. And while the legal system should, and some do, pay attention to rehabilitation, I think that... I personally have seen a lot of circumstances where it's been more about punishing the behavior than helping the individual. So it falls to a case-by-case basis. And I think as a legal system, we get it right far more often than we get it wrong. But I think that we need to recognize that there are a lot of people out there living difficult lives and that punishment may not be the key. Yeah. But the other question becomes, well, what do you do with that? How do you actually, in practice, use that? That's a very tough question.
For all my fellow struggling law students, if you're taking criminal law, maybe you should listen to our podcast. I'm just saying that these questions are like proper essay questions, and they are, what builds the structure or the whole essence of our legal system in that sense. And so it'll be really nice.
One of the questions I've taught criminal law for some years, and one of the questions I always ask, really in any jurisprudential sense, is what is the purpose of law? Like, what is the purpose of power to you? Do you believe that the purpose of power is to help the strong become as strong as they can and then drag the rest of society up behind them? Mm-hmm. Is that what you believe? Is it the opposite, that you believe the purpose is to protect the weak from the strong doing whatever they want? Whatever you have, whatever your ethical disposition, you're right. There's no right answer. It's an ethical question. But look at the law through that lens, and all of a sudden it will make a lot more sense. So if you believe, for example, the purposes of the law are to protect the innocent and the weak from the strong, if you look at the law through that lens, you'll start to find cases that support that perspective. Similarly, if you look at it, you'll find cases that support the other perspective. And what you'll find is what the legal system has tried to do is to take these very different ideas and unite them under one common banner. And it's a marvelous thing to see.
Yeah, I think that's probably streamlining your thought process and where you stand as well. You know, in the law, it's always two sides of a coin.
It
always
depends.
the grey area.
Depends. Well, yeah, that's right. We live in grey.
Yeah, that's what I always think. All right. We are now on our last question. The insight has been insane. I hope you guys are enjoying it so far. So last but not least, what do you think about the statement, lawyers often tell lies in order to help their clients win the case?
It's so short-sighted. It's so incorrect. You have a duty to the court to behave in a certain way, and that is to behave honorably and ethically. Never would you tell a lie in court. Never. Never would you bend the truth. Never would you shift something like that. It just doesn't make sense. It's just not worth it. And
Right.
so I really, I take issue with this. There's this like idea that lawyers are these sleazy, pond scummy people who'll do anything. At the end of the day, my number one obligation is to keep the system going. And for the system to keep going, people need to have faith that when lawyers open their mouth, what's coming out of it is true. Have I misspoken in court? Yes. Have I corrected it as quickly as I could? Absolutely. But the reality of the situation is that we would never lie, cheat, or do anything like that to advance anyone's case, no matter how important the outcome is.
Okay, there we have it. I think it's just a lot of, obviously, it's like two sides of the coin. Some people think that, like he's obviously guilty, so how did he get off scot-free?
Yep.
And I think it's just a lot of perspective, and really with the law, coming from a struggling law student, every time I have a question in class, it really depends on the facts. So I think it's hard for the public to see it in that way and be like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. I can see why the judgment was turned over,
It depends is pretty much the most common advice you will get in the legal system. And it depends only really becomes yes or no when it's tested before a judge.
Yeah. It's really, you never know.
Of course
You
not.
could have done like 10 hours of your homework and your research if the judge doesn't think so.
I look, we've all had that experience, that I remember one exam in law school that I was completely unprepared for. There was 9 topics and I said, okay, I've got time for 5.
Oh my God.
I'm just going to take 5 because the exam itself would have like 4 questions.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll take 5. I'll take 5 and I'll take a punt at what they are. And wouldn't you know it, I got 4 of those. It was manna from heaven, right? It was the exact stuff that I had
That's crazy.
studied. And it was like, if they'd asked me anything about any of those other areas, I would be screwed. And so and there's been the exact opposite case where it's like, I've prepared for, okay, there's 10 situations. I get in there. Oh, wow, situation 11. Didn't know that would happen. So it's just, it's battlefield surgery, right? Like you're making it up on the battlefield. You're doing what you can. You're figuring it out.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone's just trying to figure it out.
Just figuring it out.
Nice. I think that's all the questions we have today. And we can call it a wrap. But remember to keep questioning, exploring, and stay keen for our weekly episodes. As we continue to journey through the maze of, a lot of controversies, and we will continue spilling the tea. I'm telling you guys, there's a promise now. Our episodes will only get more interesting as we go because we definitely do have a theme. So I'm really, really keen to have a lot of guests that Jahan will be inviting as well. And yeah, feel free to interact with us through our DMs. Jahan has quite a big following on TikTok. Feel free to leave comments on his videos as well to tell us what you want to hear from us as well.
I think that's the biggest takeaway, right? So you as a creator, you have your idea of what you think people will like and you make it and people go, I don't want to see this. I don't care. And then one of my most popular videos is, can I drive barefoot?
Oh my God, I watched that.
Yeah, right? Because people were like asking, hey, can I drive? And I was like, that's a really good question. I went out and found out. You can, by the way, assuming you have control of the vehicle.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so that's really what this whole podcast is about. We really want to hear what you guys want to know. We want to know, like what aspects of the law are you a little bit puzzled by, and if you like to have any sort of like insight, from a lawyer himself or even the other guest panelists, we would love to know. So just slide into our DMs anytime. Let us know your questions, your queries, or even feedback. Like, hey,
We're
I
here
think
to learn.
Jahan should wear a costume next episode.
Just like a clown.
Yeah. Please request that. I want to see
a
it.
clown hat.
And yeah, so thank you so much for joining us on Cross Examinations with Jahan Kalantar.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.